We knew it was coming, and now it's here. Time's up for the garden, at least this year. Welcome back, casual gardeners. My garden is shutting down for the season, and even though I've technically gotten a whole extra week before the first frost, it's still kind of smarts. We don't have any late crops to look forward to in the greenhouse because right now, the greenhouse is a construction zone. I'm a busy beaver chopping wood and installing some modifications that I hope will make it a more comfortable and functional space to grow some late season and early season crops in. We've harvested pretty much everything we're going to get out of the garden this year, including a late watermelon and just a whole bunch of green tomatoes. If you're coming up on the end of your season, you got a bunch of green tomatoes on your vine, which you probably will if you're growing indeterminate tomatoes. One thing you can consider doing is pulling your plant up by the roots and hanging it in your garage upside down for a while. This might get them a little bit more vine ripened than they would be if you just picked them. It's not a guarantee. One thing we like doing in my household is we like to make a verde salsa with our green tomatoes, and it is delicious, especially on enchiladas. This was my first full year in the garden. I think we had some pros and cons. Good things first, because I'm an optimist. This was my first season in Logan growing winter squash and my first season anywhere growing watermelons, and I was actually quite happy with how they turned out. I got 4 watermelons off 2 plants, which is just slightly below average, and oh my gosh, so many butternut squash. We're going to be eating them probably all winter long. Luckily, I do have a root cellar to store them in. The nice thing about winter squash, just in case you're coming up on the end of your season and you're like, what do? I have these unripe winter squash, these winter squash that did not ripen all the way on the vine. So the downside is they aren't going to ripen anymore once that vine dies. They just ripen on the vine. That's cucurbits for you. But they are edible at every point in their lifespan. So you can harvest a green butternut squash and eat it. Even though I crowded them, these tomato plants made it into about mid-October with no sign of disease on any of my plants, which this is the first year I've had disease-free plants, and this might be the tightest I've packed them. I've got 10 plants in a 4-foot by 8-foot bed. So that is something that's gone very well. And if you do want to grow multiple plants with tight spacing, I do recommend growing them up stakes. It's just the way to do it. I'm also very pleased with the quality of the soil in my beds. I filled them with just my native soil, and here in Logan, Utah, we have, in this spot, heavy clay soil. I know up on the benches, they're dealing with sandy soil, which has its own problems. But here our soil is heavy clay, and despite that, I have this amazing, workable, fertile, fantastic soil just through the addition of organic matter as I've gardened. Just judging by the quality of my soil, you can definitely follow my advice on soil care and you'll probably be okay. I'm also really excited to expand from the annual beds here within the deer fence to some perennial beds outside the deer fence. Hopefully I'm going to be able to select some perennial varieties that can handle some occasional nibbling. I've already got some raspberries in the ground. So that was everything that's going well. There are also a few things that could have gone better. Perhaps the hardest thing this year was a late frost in the middle of June. A June late frost is not something I'm terribly okay with. And that, it made it feel like this first full season in the garden wasn't actually a full season in the garden. I also wasn't super satisfied with how many ripe peppers I had by the end of the season. So I think next year, instead of starting my peppers in March, I'm going to start them in the beginning of February. And hopefully my greenhouse will be assembled well enough to take on that burden by the time the peppers are too big for my seed starting area. This has been year 2 of grasshoppocalypse. That was also pretty rough. Not only did that late frost knock down most of my spring crops, but then the grasshoppers came and finished them off. I am super happy that my tomatoes were relatively untouched, and despite their attempts at just decimating my basil, I've actually got quite a bit of basil left. I might have to take some cuttings of that so that I can root it and have it in my sunroom over the winter. We'll see how that goes. Basil is actually quite easy to grow from cuttings. So if you are growing basil at home and this is the end of your growing season, sure, you could dig up a mature plant and try to find a pot big enough for it. But you might be a little bit happier if you just take some cuttings and move them inside. So perhaps one of the more noteworthy problems I've had this season has been the sheer amount of powdery mildew on this summer squash. It's right next to my happy, healthy, almost entirely disease-free tomatoes. So I think this is not a question of husbandry so much as it is the variety of summer squash that I grew this year. So we're going to see, because it's been a particularly dry summer, we're going to see if I can find a more disease-resistant variety of summer squash and give it a try next year. Now finally, the last thing this year that didn't go exactly as planned, I mentioned that my greenhouse is a construction zone. Hopefully, I am going to be able to get to a point where the capabilities of my greenhouse match what I want out of my greenhouse. And there might be a video later this winter where I show you and talk about what's happened in there. Hopefully it'll be a good news video. So that was the bad stuff. Let's talk about a little bit more good stuff. I'm super pleased and excited with where this channel has gone over the past year. We have gained over 850 new subscribers. So I want to thank everyone who's subscribed to my channel and helped it grow and gotten it to a point where it's monetized. I am making about $10 a month now, which if you compare it to working for free is pretty decent. I'm looking forward to doing a bit better. Now regarding the YouTube channel itself, I'm also kind of pleased with the direction my editing is heading in. I mean, I'm still obviously not a professional editor, but I feel like over the past year, I've improved my tools and I've improved my methods a little bit, and hopefully I'm able to create for you something that's a little less painful to watch while you're waiting to maybe pick up a fact or two about gardening. Now that the seasons are changing, and tomorrow night a killing frost is going to sweep through the valley, and these beautiful green plants are gonna die. There are going to be a few changes to how I run my channel for the winter season. From now until about February or March of 2025, the frequency with which I post videos to the channel is going to go down. It's going to go to about half. So instead of a video a week, which is what I've been shooting for, I'm going to bring it down to about 2 videos a month. And the reason I want to do that is that I'm going to do more information-dense videos over the winter that aren't as much about gardening as they are about garden science and agricultural news. There's actually some really great horticultural science news that I'm excited to share with you guys that have been following. Stuff that's weird or wonderful or potentially useful that we're learning about horticulture out in science land. And then also, this year I have completed a series of courses towards Master Gardener certification. Hopefully I'll be graduating in a month or two and I will be a Master Gardener, which doesn't really change much aside from the fact that I have a little certificate and I've done a bunch of community service for Utah State University. Where I'm going with that is, having completed those courses, I actually have some information I can share with you. And I think USU will be okay with that, because the idea of training Master Gardeners is to get us to go out into the world and share the information they've given us. So let me know down in the comments if you think it would be fun or useful, or you'd be willing to watch a series of videos where I go over everything that I've learned as a Master Gardener. You won't be a real Master Gardener having watched the videos, because I do not have the authority to call you that. Now, finally, I am working on creating a studio space inside the house. You might, in the near future, see a video that I've recorded in a room, indoors, that's not my scary kitchen. So you have that to look forward to as well. You know, just one more thing that happened. Some deer, I left the gate open. So the fence has been working great, but I left the gate open and the deer came through it, and they've grazed on my field peas quite a bit. And they've also chewed one of my grapevines to the ground. So we'll see next spring how well that one comes back. I mean, it was gonna lose all its leaves in a couple days anyway, so maybe it's not a big loss. I don't know. Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel if anything I've talked about, looking forward to in the future, sounds interesting to you. Like this video if you liked it. You should go back and like all of my videos retroactively. It'll be a big solid for me. Just do the likey with the pokey. Thank you for joining me here in my garden today, and I hope you have a wonderful time in your own.